Hello and welcome back to STEAM with Steve. Today we're going to go through how GUIs look like in Python. We're going to build one from scratch so that you'll have an actual live application. So this will be a lot of fun. So let's jump on in. So GUI stand for Graphical User Interfaces. Now this is what our tablets look like, our mobile phones, our PCs. It allows you to interact with your computer in a meaningful sort of way. So instead of you having to type away, which is what we've done so far, you'll be able to actually click on buttons and interact with inside your application, which is pretty cool. So let's first get some definitions happening. So first of all, what is a GUI? So a GUI is a visual interface that allows users to interact with an electronic device through graphical icons and visual indicators. So it can either be an operating system or an application. Now we're just going to unpackage what an operating system is first, because it is pretty useful. So there are three, but there's two main ones that commercially get used is Windows or Mac OS from Apple. And what you can see there is they have a whole heap of different buttons and icons that you can interact, click on, and what we're going to look at is how you can actually build something like that behind the scenes. Life before GUIs. So before Windows and Apple, all operating systems were text-based. So if you look at Linux, MS-DOS, X3 Gold, it used to look something like this. So MS-DOS was Microsoft's operating system, and basically what happened is if you wanted to load a game, you would have to type the folder where the game was located, type that away, press enter, and then load the game from that, which was quite tedious and a little bit boring. Then we had X3 Gold, which was the next one. This was a little bit better because you actually had a menu system here that you could use up and down arrow keys to get it around. And it was a little bit more user-friendly, but again, not quite what we're used to today. So what makes up an operating system GUI? Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, you've got a pointer, which is the little white symbol that you see moving around on the screen. You then have the pointing device, which is like the mouse that you have. You then have icons on the screen, so that shows where all the stuff moves around on the screen, like your loading files, your Fortnite double click on your icon. And then you've got your desktop, which is the area that most people see when you load up your computer. Then you've got the windows for the different areas that you want to see inside of, and then the menu systems. So this is a graphical user interface that allows you to execute commands from those menus. So this is what a GUI desktop would look like. So here's the desktop area down the bottom. Here's the desktop icons, and then there's the window up the top, and then there's the start menu. So these are all the different actions that you can do inside the menu. And then in the start menu over here, you can click on these different icons and it will do different things. And then obviously you've got the pointer down there in the right. So that's what an operating system GUI looks like. What about application GUI? So that's probably what we're more interested in. So for this, what happens is any application that runs with an operating system needs to have some files and different system things hitting it behind the scene. So for example, a calculator GUI would look like this, whereas you can actually do a command line calculator like what we've done in Python before. So you can type away in your computer and then it will actually change different math functions and so on. Most people prefer to work with graphical user interfaces. So graphical user interfaces are a lot easier to sort of deal with, and people understand what has to happen. And that's what we're going to get to build today. So we're going to build the foundations of that and understand how to do that in PyQt. So there's 4 different things that we need to install. So first of all, we need to install the latest version of Python, which at this time it was 10.2. You then install PyQt6, then PyCharm, and then lastly, an application called Qt Designer. Now, for those that are familiar with Microsoft Visual Basic back in the day, this will allow you to do a drop and drag version of a form, save it, and then run it in Python, which will allow you to do some really cool stuff straight off the bat. So the first step that we need to do is download Python 10.2. So we come down here to python.org/downloads, click on that guy, and then up will come the screen. So if we come across here, and we go downloads, and it will download the latest version. Open that guy up, and then make sure you've got the Mac or the Windows version that you need. I've already installed Python 3.12, so I don't actually want to install it, but you'll get a similar screen to this to say start. And then this is really important. Under the optional features, make sure that you click on the pip so that you're able to get the next step done. Okay, so it's really important that pip is clicked, and then you click on next and next and next, and then install. I'm just going to exit that because I've already got it installed. Cool. So what should happen is you've got Python installed now. Now for PyQt6, this is pretty easy. If you've got pip installed, we're going to open up the command prompt, and all we're going to do is type in pip install PyQt6. So to open it up, press the Windows key. CMD will open up the command prompt, and then this will open up something that looks like Microsoft DOS. Then we're going to go pip install Py with capital P, Q with capital Q, P6, enter. Now, because I've got it already installed, it's satisfied, but for you, that should then go through, find the Python 3.12 library, and then install everything for you, which is really, really cool. So you don't have to go through and find downloads, you just literally need to type that in. For our Mac friends, it's a little bit different. You'll have to type in Python 3.12-m pip install PyQt6 into the terminal. So basically you just press, I think it was Apple space, type in terminal, and then type that value in there, and you'll get exactly the same thing that you just saw. Cool. So now to see if that actually works, let's open up idle. And let's build this code just to see if there is a connection between the Qt tools, which is all the different objects and the libraries for the buttons and the text boxes, and with this. So here we go. We're going to go import syst, which imports the system from PyQt6. We're going to import the Qt widgets, and then our app is going to equal Qt widgets .q application sys.argv widget equals Qt widgets.q widget widget.resize 400, 200 widget.set window title. This is PyQt widget example, exclamation mark. Widget.show, which is the most important part, otherwise the thing won't show on the screen. And then at the end, you've got a little exit clause that will allow it to exit the application. Cool. So we're going to save that and go call that window tester. Let's run it. And bam, there you go. So what you'll see is we've now built our first application. Now, I'm not expecting you to understand any of this code. The whole idea is you might see some things and go, oh, actually, that's kind of cool. Let's see, I remember how that sort of links. But basically what we need to be able to do is retype that code. And then you'll be able to play around with different pieces of this to be able to do some cool, really, really cool stuff. Cool. So test the code that works. Awesome. So the next step that we're going to do, and I'm going to do this with you, is install PyCharm. Now, PyCharm is awesome. You can basically build all these different programs in a professional environment, and it's able to give you direct feedback as to whether or not your code's looking good or not. It has a whole heap of little autocorrect features built into it, and it makes your programming life 10 times easier when you get to it. So I've got a link here for the Mac version if you wanted to click on that and go through that process, but I'll be doing the PC version and I'll show you how to get there. So you can either just look up JetBrains itself and get something like this. And we want to go to the downloads so that it makes sure that it gives us the right version. Now, please don't install the professional edition. You will have to pay for that. What we want to do is use the community edition down the bottom here. So click on the download there and it will start downloading for you. Now, I'm just actually going to cancel that because I've already got it downloaded. And we're going to open it up here and we're going to install the Python Qt Community Edition. Then we're going to go yes. Then we're going to go next, next. And then we want to create associations with .py. So now whenever we open a Python file, it will always open up in our PyCharm. And then we go install. Now the really cool part with PyCharm is actually the colors. So when you're typing different variables, for example, it will change the names and the colors to match what the different data types are. So for example, numbers will change to purple, strings will change to yellow, and it just makes your life that much easier when you're scrolling through trying to find all the different sort of coding examples and trying to understand where the errors happen as well. And the autocomplete is really, really, really cool. So let's jump on in and open up PyCharm. So if we open up PyCharm, we'll go do not import settings, and you start with this screen. So you can have a tour there if you want. I'm just going to go straight into it because I know what I'm doing. And we've got the new project. So every time you open a new project, you'll get a window that looks like this. So we can do, let's call this example 1. We're going to build example 1. The interpreter, and this is what's really cool about PyCharm, is it saves a copy of Python with it. So if you're using the 3.12 engine, you can click on it there. And then by simply clicking that little tag there, you now have all the PyQt tools that we've just installed. So then we can go create, and we will have our PyCharm window. So what you'll see here, it looks a little bit different compared to what we had before. I'm going to just increase it by pressing Alt, Shift, and Plus, just so that you can see it at home. But basically what you should see is exactly the same as what's happened before with slightly different colors. But it also gives you the line numbers and then tells you where the usages occur. And yeah, there's some really, really neat stuff here. So if we run play, what happens is instead of having a separate window for the terminal's built in. So here it is, it's run this program and said, hi PyCharm. So that's sort of the base one. Now, if you ever want to hide anything here, you just literally click on the icons and then that will get rid of it. So then you can see all the stuff. You can also press Alt 4 if you want to upload the console. Cool, so we're going to do a little bit of configuration here. Now this is a little bit technical, but it is super useful to make the experience just that little bit better. So up here under the main menu, you can type that and then come down here to settings. Now this may look overwhelming at the start, but all we need to focus on is the plugins. So down the bottom here, we're going to add in a few plugins that will make this experience just a little bit more fun. So the first one I always install is the 9 progress bar. And what it is it's basically a little progress bar. Whenever you install stuff, it will have a little the little kitty flying along, which is pretty fun. So now that we try and install that first, we're going to restart the IDE just so that you can see what happens with that. And then every time you install a plugin now, we go back up to settings, we'll now have that little kitty thing coming across. So the first thing we're going to install now is the materials theme. So every time you install that plugin, you basically just have to restart the IDE and everything gets loaded in behind the scenes. So the first one that I like using is the Monokai Pro. So this, let's go themes. And then we're going to go the Monokai Pro theme, which is this one here. Now, a little trick, which is why I was confused just before. It can tell you how many of them has been downloaded. This has been downloaded 1.4 million times. So it's one of the more popular themes that are out there. There's a whole heap of different ones out. I just like this one. It just makes it a bit easier. And then you just saw the little kitty installed on the side there, which was a bit of fun. Then we need to install the icons. So Atom Material thing, Atom Material icons. So there's 5.9 million times that's been installed. This just makes the icons that happen on the left here just a little bit more obvious when you're sort of dealing with it. Now, I'm not going to restart the IDE because there's a few more we want to install. So we're going to go highlight brackets pair. And what this does is as you're typing, it shows you where the pairing between different brackets are. Then we're going to go rainbow, and there's a couple of these. We're going to go rainbow brackets, and then the indent rainbow. And then if you want, rainbow CSV is useful as well. Cool, so that should now all be all the ones that we wanted to install. We're then going to change the appearance a little bit. So what we're going to do is under font, it comes default with JetBrains Mono. That's fine if you want to use it. I personally like using Fira code. It just seems a little bit more condensed and it's just a little bit nicer for me. And I'm going to increase that up to 16. And then I usually change this to 1.15 because I'm very finicky. And then you want to enable ligatures. Now ligatures are really cool. What they mean is instead of having single equals equals or not equals, it literally merges them together and makes these really cool symbols that make it a little bit easier to read. So that's done there. And then the other thing that I like doing under appearance or the menus, I actually prefer to change my font for that as well to make it a little bit more different. And I like using Franklin Gothic Demi. Change that to 14. So let's run that. Cool. Good to go. So now I'm going to restart it. And everything that we've just installed should now be all good to go. So just close those down, close that down, close, close, close. Cool. Oh, and then one last thing that we need to do is then go under settings, change our theme, and go Monotype Pro. Okay. And now we're all good to go. So this is the UI that I like using. It's up to you. Everyone's got their different preferences. This makes it a lot easier for me to sort of understand. For example, parameters, they now got these orange links. And then what you can see now is if you click inside brackets, it will automatically highlight the bracket around it, which is really, really handy when you do different bits of code. So let's go back to the original code that we just built and see what the difference is if we paste that in. So what you should see now is you've got the reserve word still. And if you hover over it, it tells you, it loads the library that describes what does import actually do. So if you ever do get stuck, you can go there and then scroll through and see exactly how to use it, which is really, really cool. You'll then also see any variable just stays as white. Equal signs now become equals. Colors for the integers basically get changed there. Strings stay yellow, and then any function stays as purple, which is pretty cool. Cool, so let's run that and see what happens. Awesome, so our little app works. So that still works, does exactly the same thing, except now we've got this nice interface to sort of play around with, which in my opinion makes life a lot easier. And the feedback that you get in terms of errors as well and debugging just makes your life much easier. Cool, so let's jump back into the PowerPoint. So we've gone through that, gone through making sure we inherit the global packages. They'll copy across the PyQt libraries. And these were the add-ons that I installed. Up to you if you want. They do make a little bit easier though when you go through. I like changing to Fira code under the font. That's up to you. And then also under appearances and behavior, I like changing that to Franklin as well, like you just saw. Cool, so tested it, we did, and that worked. So now we've got the cool part of installing the Qt Designer. Now the Qt Designer, when you open it, will give you this page, and then all you do is select your operating system here, click on that link, and then download it. So I've already got it downloaded, sorry. So we're going to install the Qt Designer. Click on next, install. install it, did I not? Here we go. Qt Designer. Sorry, I've already got it installed. Let's close that down. Basically, you would have installed it, go through the step by step, and then you would have had it installed. So we're going to go here now. Sorry, a little bit flustered. Go yes, next, install, and run it. There we go. So that's what the Qt Designer looks like. Sorry, it's messing up because of I've got OBS and PowerPoint going at the same time. And what happens is when you open it up, you've got the main window here. So you click on main window and then you go create. And what happens now is you have a form here that you can play around with. So inside this form, inside Qt Designer, you've got a whole heap of different things. You've got the layout over here on the left where you can drop and drag the different icons and things that you want to add on. And then on the right, you've got the object inspector. So we're going to build our own little app here eventually. And it's as simple as if you want to install something, you just literally drop and drag it, which is what's really cool. So if you want a button, you want a radio button, you want a checkbox, every time you add it in, it has it here. And then you can see all the different inspection of the items there. I'm just going to undo that. And yeah, so that's basically it. So we're going to go through now and actually build our first app. Now, it's really important to consider this. You don't need to be a great F1 driver. To be a great F1 driver, you don't need to be a mechanic. So when we're building this, I'm going to try and show you all the code and do all the things behind the scenes. You just need to work out what pieces you need to sit in and drive. Okay. So I've tried to comment this out and made it really clear what needs to be changed. And yeah, so let's jump on in. So we're going to make a real basic app called cat, dog, fish. So the cat, dog, fish application is basically going to have 3 buttons. You click on one of the buttons and it will change the text that is displayed. So let's jump in. So the first step is we're going to build a text edit window that looks like this. We're going to drop 3 quick little buttons onto the screen like so. And then what we're going to do is change the name to cat button, dog button, fish button. And notice the camel case, which will be important later, and then change the text to cat, dog, and fish. So every time we click on cat, cat will appear, dog will appear, fish will appear. So the first step is we're going to create a new project in PyCharm. So we're going to go here, we're going to go under here with new project. We're going to call this one cat, dog, fish. I'm going to call it 2. Don't do that. It's just because I've already got a copy of it. Make sure you go inherit global site packages and then you click on create. So don't ask this window again and go this window. So now I've built my code in the area. It's got a main thing inside cat, dog, fish, and I can start coding away. So we're going to go automatically. Yep. Let's delete that. Cool. So now what we want to do is find a UI file and upload it into that space. So we're going to drop and drag in the buttons. So we're going to go the push button one there, another push button, and then another one. We're then going to change the name on the push button. So we're going to call this one button, and then scroll down here. And you'll see there's the text that you can change. So in Qt Designer, it's really cool. What happens is you have all the different objects here with the project inspector, and you can change these different things. So you can change the maximum size, you can change the icon size that gets displayed in the top left, you can change the icon. There's heaps of things that you can do. So we're going to change that to be a cat. And then this one here, we're going to come up here and call this dog button. And scroll down here and change this to dog. Then this guy up here, we're going to call this fish button. And then change that to fish. Right, then the next bit is we're going to add in a text editor. So if we come down here, there's inputs. There is also displays, so sometimes people will use labels, which means that you can't change it. But if we go to text editor, we can type that, put that in. We're then now going to change this, instead of what it was, to now be output. And then you can scroll all the way down here and see how it's got a text edit inside. We can then put placeholder text. So this is some sample. And then you control if there needs a scroll bar, you can change all these different things and really customize what happens with that button. Cool. So now what we're going to do is save this. And the file that this saves is basically called a UI file. And that allows us to upload later down the track. So I'm going to try and find where our PyCharm files are saved. So we come into our users, your username, then PyCharm projects. And then I have already done CatDogFish, but we're going to do the sequel. So we're going to go to CatDogFish. And we're going to call this catdogfish.ui. So save that. And now your code should be built. So if we save that, we're now done. So I leave Qt Designer in the background, but that's pretty much all that you need to do in Qt Designer. And you've built your first form, which is really, really cool. So there's some really interesting stuff that we can now do from there. So if you come here under the project panel, you can now see that the CatDogFish UI file has been loaded next to the main. So we now can link between the two because they're in the same folder. If you double click on that, you can even see inside of it, which is called an XML file. And you can now see all the code that has been generated for you, which is really, really, really cool. So it handles all the windows, the size of the window, so 640 by 480. The widgets, so here's the button and it's named it, and then it's giving a description, and then had the cat text been changed. And then if you want to manually change stuff, you can. So for example, I did a capital C there where it should be a lowercase, and I'm going to change it there, which now will update it, which is pretty cool. But yeah, there's a whole heap of stuff there that's automatically generated, which we won't delve into too far. Cool. So you should have done that. We've uploaded it, we created the main window, which will be the skeleton file. We saved the UI file. We created the buttons. So we've created cat button, dog button, fish button, and made sure that we've used camel case. We then uploaded it. So we went through and found the button here, dropped and dragged it into the screen. We then changed the object name. And then down the bottom, we changed the text that was shown. So it should say cat. We then added a text edit down the bottom here, and then changed the name to output over here, which is the object. Cool. So this is probably the hardest part of the whole lesson. So this part here, I apologize, it is a little bit overwhelming the first time you look at it. But like I said, you don't have to be a mechanic to be an F1 driver. So just pause the video here, type this out. You don't need to do any the saving, because it's all handled in behind the scenes. And then also note the init function basically will initialize the start of this. So just pause the video, type it out, and then we'll unpackage what all these things mean. Cool. So what you should have seen when you typed this out is you've got the importing of the widgets, which is all the different objects that we've built in Qt Designer. You then have this thing called a UIC. UIC basically allows you to load the file. So it's a UIC, user interface converter, basically. And then imports the system files that allow you to do it. Now, we haven't done classes before, but the idea behind a class we'll delve into a bit later, but basically it builds an object. So we're going to build an object called a UI that takes from the Q main window. So it extends based off this. It then has an init function, which we're going to use the Q main window function from here. So we're going to initialize the main window function by using the super function. So that's handled way down the track. So this is the part that would be confusing, but all you got to do is just type it. I've then gone through and given you comments here to say all the 4 steps that you need to do to be able to build your own window. So change the UI file to the link it. So you're going to use uic.load UI. and then UI file catdogfish.ui, and then self. We're then going to find the widgets inside the XML. We're then going to make signals to the button. And then lastly, we're going to create all the functions that link to the widgets in here. Underneath here, we then build an application. So this allows Windows to connect to the application that we're going to build. We're then going to build our own window. So this is exactly the same as what we used to do in Turtle. So we've built our own Turtle before. So this time we've built our own window. And now we're going to go window.show. So that then shows the window and then the application we want to execute it. This is the cookie cutter code that you need to be able to build any basic app that you want to see from now on. So this allows you to build your user interface from scratch, which is really, really, really cool. And we're now going to play around with all the pieces. So I'm going to actually show you me typing this now in my version. So here we go. So we're going to go from PyQt6.qt capital key Q, sorry, QTW. Now here's where it gets a little bit interesting. I can now press tab and it will automatically complete the widgets. I'm then going to go import tab and then Q main tab, comma, Q application tab, Q push tab, Q text. Done. How cool is that? Now the really neat thing is because this hasn't been used, it's all grayed out, and I'm getting over here these warnings and a weak warning. So I can click on that and it tells me I have an unused statement from these things, which is really, really cool. So now I want to then import PyQt6 and I want to import the user converter, so UIC. Then I want to import the system files. And that's pretty much it. So those are all the libraries that are now loaded that behind the scenes that I need to play with. Right, so now I want to build a class. So this is like building a new object. So I'm going to make a user interface object and it's going to extend from the main window. Snaky vibe. And then going to go def init. And it's going to use self. And then how cool is that? It automatically completed and filled it in for me. And then I'm going to use the super function. I'm going to jam UI into it. And I'm going to connect self with that. So that's self basically reference to it. It's self. And then I want to use the init function. Done. So that handles all everything that we're going to type now is going to extend on that main window object that already exists, which is really, 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 really cool. So now, if I want to change the UI file that needs to be linked, I'm going to go uic.load, and then I'm going to put in the name over here on the left, the cat dog fish UI, cat dog fish.ui, and then I'm going to connect self to it. Done. Then going to add in another comment. So find the widgets in the XML file. I'm going to make the signal connections, the buttons, and then notice that it unindented. So I press Shift Tab and it will go back. Then I'm going to create all the functions to link to the widgets. Yeah. Then underneath, we want to then build an app that's a Q application. And sys.argv, which then links it to the system. So the application we're building will be linked. We then go window is equal to UI. So that builds a new window, much like what we've done before when we've done turtle.turtle. And then I go window.show, so therefore it will show the window. And then app.execute. Cool. So now under here, you should see all these errors popping up, which basically means that they're warnings. So anything with a little exclamation mark means that it's not bad, won't break the system, but it's not ideal. So the import statement has been used. So you should see now that this has changed from being all grayed out, that the Q main window and the Q application has been used inside of the code down here. And then you can see that Q text edit has also been used, which is pretty cool. You can then also reformat the file. So see, it's got all those purple lines. So now it is PEP or compliant. So all those errors have gone. And then what happens then is you've basically got a really cool industry level application already built, which is pretty neat. So it thinks there's a typo in cat dogfish, which it isn't, because that's what I've called it. And then yeah, you've built your code. So I'm just going to hide this so that we get a bit more space, and then I can hide the console down here a little bit so we get a bit more space as well. Cool. So now we've got the next bit. We've connected the UI file by using cat dogfish. So that's what the init function does. We then want to connect the UI file with these 4 steps. So we've loaded the UI file. We then want to load the XML objects into Python so Python recognizes them. We then want to connect a thing called the signals to the objects. So if we run this code at the moment, there won't be any signals that connect. And just to show you what that means, if I run this, at the moment, I've got the objects, but then if I click on it, nothing's happened because it doesn't have a connection between it. So if we come back here, we want to connect those signals. Once those signals are connected, we then want to create functions that then interact with the objects that we've linked inside of Python. So let's jump into that. So the second step now is after we've loaded the UIC files, we want to connect the XML objects. So we're going to go self.output and find the child that is a Q text editor that's called output. Now that's what we labeled it inside of Qt Designer. Then, so these things on the left here are all the Python variables or identifiers to connect, so that Python will understand what has to happen. This bit of code on the right here is what's converting the Q text editor that we've built in XML, and then it's finding the XML version of what output is, so that it's able to convert it into something that Python will understand. Does the same then for all the buttons. And then what happens then is Python can now interact with this. So let's build that part now. So under here, find widgets. We're then going to find the XML objects and then convert them into something Python will understand. So we're going to go self.output and make that self.findChild. And we're going to find a Q text edit that's called output. We're then going to go self.cat button. These are the names that Python will know. We're then going to try and find inside that XML file the child that is called a Q, that is a Q push button, that is called cat button. We're then going to try and find the dog button. We're going to try and find the child that's got a Q push button that's called dog button. And then we want to find the fish button. Find the child, Q push button called fish button. Cool. So that should, why is that breaking out? No, it should be fine. Cool. So what should happen now? Oh, sorry, find child, that's why. And that's how cool PyCharm is. So see how it's found an error for me? And then it was like, oh no, you haven't done this. And then I was able to read through and work out what was missing. So that now has a link. So now, if I type output, I get access to all the things that output has attached to it. If I then press cat button, there should be a few things inside of that as well. That's all the links that are attached to that. So then we want to do the next step. So if I load that, let's say I change this to be wrong, it should now link and it's still not going to be able to do anything because we haven't added any functions or signals to it. So let's stop that. So if you don't link with the correct names, eventually what will happen is it will freak out and go, well, that was meant to be a camel case. So that's the error that will pop up down the bottom if you don't get it working. The next step now is we want to do button actions. So when a button is clicked, we can then get it to perform a function, which is what the init has done. When you make these signals get connected, they're called within inside the function. So you basically go self.button.clicked.connect and then connect it with a function name that you're going to do, which will eventually do the signals. So now we've built all these objects, we want to make these signals that connect to it. So this is kind of like Batman. You've got these signals, it looks for the signal, then it gets executed. So the way these signals look something like this. So you're going to go self.catButton.clicked.connect self.clicked. Then we're going to go again. We're going to connect the dog button. So we're going to go self.dog.button.clicked.connect self.clicked.dog self.fishbutton.clicked.connect self.clicked.fish. Now what you should see here is they have these underlines or warnings happening again. So unresolved attribute referencing clicked cat. So what happens is these are the functions that want to execute. So when the button is clicked, this is the function that gets hit. Okay, which is what we've got to do down here as the final step. So the final step to set the labels is we need to make functions for every time the button is clicked. So the way that you do this is you do define the button clicked or whatever the name of the button is with self, and then you can change the different objects that you've got. So we've got self.ui.label, set the text, and then you can change the button was clicked. So this will change the label to now say the button was clicked. So we've connected the signals to the function. We're now going to define the functions, which is the last bit. So we're going to go def clicked cat, and then now we can change the output to say cat, which is really, really cool. So underneath here, we'll go def clicked cat with self, and it's automatically fill that in for me, which is kind of cool. And then I'm going to go self.output.set text to cat. Then we're going to go set def click dog self, and automatically fills that in for me. And then we're going to go self.output.set the text dog, and then def clicked fish with self. I'm going to go self.output.set text fish. So what you should see now is these are the functions that are connected to these buttons that were then found inside the XML document. That's basically it, which is pretty cool. And then we can get rid of the PEP4 issues by showing context. Should be any errors there. Let's go error, ignore those errors, and we're good to go. Now it's really important to make sure you get rid of errors as you go so that you know that your code's all clean and it's all ready to and nicely formatted. So if we press play now, we should now have functioning little bit of code, which is pretty neat. So if you wanted to, you could now go into the cat dog fish code here, and you can now change the strings text. So I might want to say this is dog. Now if I run that, see how it's got this is a dog, which is pretty cool. So you can actually change all the different things inside of this, manually manipulate them if you want, or you can just go back to Qt Designer, drag it around, play with the way that you would like it to look like. So if you wanted this section here to look bigger, you could do so. And then if you just go Control S and save it, whatever's inside there will now override it, and you press play, and then you've already got an updated version. So if you wanted to add another text box, you want to add another button, there's heaps of stuff that you can do inside and have that workflow now. So this allows you now to have a workflow connection between both things, and gives you some really, really cool stuff that you're able to now do, which we'll do in the next lesson. So let's jump back in, and that's what the function is. So some conclusion questions that you need to think about. What are some of the different elements that can be used to add to these GUIs? How are GUIs design important, and the layout needs to be considered? And what can you see how a GUI is now built for your own favorite application? So have a look at those. There is a bit of homework that's attached to that. And yeah, there's also Kahoot that's really handy. And yeah, so hopefully that's gone through and given you a pretty good insight. That's probably one of the more intense lessons that we've done so far. But the really neat thing is this doesn't change now. So we've done all the hard work. When we do the next one, when we practice how that the links work, it becomes a lot easier. So hopefully you've picked up something there. Thanks very much. If you do have any questions, please put them in the comments down below. And if you've enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, as it does help with that YouTube algorithm, making sure that we get a few more people with this message of how to teach Python to people. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you very much. See you again next time on Steam with Steve. Adios.